Hi friends, I'm Julie. I accidentally discovered my family's biggest secret. It's such a huge revelation that our lives will never be the same again. It all started when my older sister Jenny moved in with us after leaving her husband. I had no idea at the time that our marriage had been a mess for a while. When she found out that her husband Chris had cheated on her, it was the final straw. One morning while he was sleeping, she took her sons and left him. My sister is a housewife. She's never had a job in her life. She took our kids and moved in with us because she had nowhere else to go. At first, she told us it would be temporary, but after a year and a half, she is still living with us. I think she thought she'd get back together with her husband, but they just kept fighting for months. They weren't able to reconcile. All that fighting not only caused their marriage to end, but it also messed up our family, because I saw a text message from my sister's husband when they were arguing. I was curious about what he meant with that message. When I looked into it, I found out about my sister's incredible secret. Let's rewind and go back to that evening. Now I see that by then, my sister was starting to lose any hope she had of keeping her marriage going, and this had made her very hostile. She wasn't speaking to my mom or me. She wasn't taking care of her kids. She wasn't eating. She wasn't sleeping. All she did was fight with her husband on the phone or through text messages. Yes, their marriage was in terrible shape. Chris was cheating on her. He didn't want to get back together, but my sister was still madly in love with him. She couldn't imagine her life without him. One night, I was putting her kids to sleep. The younger one asked, "How many days can a person go without food?" I knew why he was asking that. He heard my mom telling me, "Your sister didn't eat again today." Naturally, he was concerned about his mother. I gently rubbed his head. "Nothing's going to happen to your mom, because I'm going to go and make her an amazing sandwich. No way will she be able to resist it. She'll eat the whole thing," I told him. That put him at ease. "I want that same amazing sandwich in the morning too," he said as he closed his eyes. So right after he fell asleep, I went to the kitchen and made the best sandwich I could for my sister. I even added a birthday candle on it to make it cuter. I knocked on my sister's door. When she didn't answer, I cracked the door open and looked in. She had fallen asleep. I went into the room to put a blanket over her. I left the sandwich next to her bed. She was clutching her phone. Maybe she had dozed off in the middle of an argument, exhausted from lack of sleep. I smiled. She seemed so cute to me at that moment. I was still a baby when my sister left home. We never had a close relationship. Actually, that was quite normal because we didn't really spend that much time together. She didn't know me at all. That said, I can't really say her relationship with Mom is all that great either. She used to visit us at most once a year and called us every month or so. After Dad passed away, she started calling Mom more frequently. I think she was trying to be supportive, but our relationship didn't change much. She only held me and cried long and hard at Dad's funeral. I was thinking about all this as I was watching my sister sleep. I took the phone from her hand. I put it on her nightstand. Just as I did that, the phone screen lit up. She got a new message. Without meaning to, I read it. The message was from her husband. "Enough! I never told you to leave your daughter for me," he had written. While I was still processing this, another text from Chris came in. "Don't give me that guilt trip again. You didn't want your daughter. You made me your excuse. We both know that." I was so shocked and upset when I figured out what Chris was saying. Apparently, besides her two sons, my sister also had a daughter and she had given her up for adoption. Since she was blaming her husband for this, she must have abandoned her daughter to marry Chris. I accidentally learned something incredible. I switched off the light. I ran out of the room. I was still in shock when I lay in my bed. I thought my mom definitely knew about this, but she never told me. Normally, she loves talking about my sister, and she usually criticizes her. For example, she used to say, "Your sister's marriage wasn't going well since day one, but she still had those two babies. So why did she never say she had another child? Maybe my father didn't know, and she hid it from me because she was scared he would find out." This accidental discovery changed my whole perspective on my sister. How could a person do this to her own child? How could she abandon her for such a selfish reason? How old was her daughter right now? What was her adoptive family like? Did she know who her mother, my sister was? Could I find my niece? As her aunt, could I give her the warmth that her mother denied her? Now I was thinking about these non-stop. I wanted to find this poor child whose existence I had just found out about and give her back the life that her mother had taken away. But to be able to do that, I needed more information. I decided to talk to my mom and get answers to my questions. I was going to find my niece no matter what. Since my sister and her kids were always around, I had to wait for some time to talk to my mom. After a while, I got the chance I was waiting for. My sister wasn't able to look her sons in the eye. The poor kids were still trying to find out what was going on. They had moved into their grandmother's house. Their father wasn't around. Their mother was on the phone, screaming all the time. My older nephew Noah was about to start high school, but he didn't even know what city he was going to be in. He was already a shy kid. Now he had become even more withdrawn. I hadn't heard a word from him in days. My mom was naturally sad for the boys. There was a water park in our city. When I was younger, we used to go there every month. My mom thought of taking the kids there. I was supposed to go along to help her out. The following day, we were at the water park with the kids. Noah went for a swim in the pool. The younger one was playing on the slides. Mom and I sat at a cafe from where we could see the slides. I was looking forward to talking to her, but I didn't know how to start this conversation. Finally, I blurted out, "Mom, does my sister have a daughter?" My mom was stunned. She stared at me. "What are you talking about?" she said. I told her about the texts I read on my sister's phone. She was visibly stumped. She said things like, "Don't be silly, there's no such thing, you must have misunderstood." But she was so panicked that I could tell she already knew about this, but kept it from me. When I confronted her, she got angry. "You're a big girl now, you're heading off to college soon. Instead of thinking about things like this, do something for your future," she said. She began rambling on so that I wouldn't ask any more questions. When I figured out she wouldn't talk, I had to back down. What was I going to do now? My mother was obviously lying to me. I wanted to find my niece no matter what. Since I couldn't ask my sister, there was only one person left, her husband, Chris. Yes, I was going to ask him. I wasn't sure if he would help me out, but I had no choice. I had to give it a try. I didn't have Chris's phone number, but I knew the name of the car dealership where he worked. I Googled it and found it right away. I called the number. They called Chris to the phone. My voice was shaking. I said, "I'm Julie," and he was really surprised. I told him what happened. "I want to find my niece," I said. Chris said, "Forget about this for your own good." When I said, "What does it have to do with me?" "Go ask your sister. I can't say anything more," he said curtly. I didn't have any other choice. I was going to ask my sister. I went to her room. She was crying. I thought she and her husband had another fight, but this time it was something else. "Mom just told me," she said, averting her eyes. Then I understood Mom had told her that I knew about her daughter. I sat next to her. "I didn't want to upset you. I just want to find my niece and tell her that she has a family," I said, resting my head on her shoulder. My sister started stroking my hair. "You only have 2 nephews. You don't have a niece," she said. I picked my head up from her shoulder. I looked at her. "What do you mean? But you also have a daughter," I said. "Yes, I also have a daughter," she said, averting her eyes again. In that moment, the world started to spin. My ears were ringing with those sentences. "You don't have a niece, but you also have a daughter." Yes, I also have a daughter. I stared at her in disbelief. I was speechless for a minute. Then I said, "So I'm your daughter?" My sister nodded. "Yes, Julie, you're my daughter." I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to say. My sister, who I had just found out seconds ago that was in fact my mother, started telling me the whole story. "It was my freshman year in college. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I got pregnant by someone I didn't really know well. All I knew was his name, or at least I think I did. I still had the baby, and that was you. I was going to school. Your grandmother was taking care of you. Then I met Chris. I fell in love with him. Chris wasn't someone who would marry a young woman with a baby because he was an adventurer at heart. He wanted to travel the world and eventually settle down in a place that he liked. I left you with your grandmother and left with him. We traveled for 3.5 years. We got married along the way, but we came back because we couldn't make it work anywhere else. When I got back, I saw that you were calling your grandmother Mom. While I was gone, your grandmother had become your mother. I was really sad, but I knew I deserved it. Your grandmother made me swear, "You will never tell anyone that Julie is your daughter," she said. No one else other than Dad and Chris knew. And now you know. Everything came out in the open that day. I was the biggest secret in my own family. The person I knew as my sister was my mother. The person I knew as my mother was my grandmother. So what happened after I found out about all this? You might think it's strange, but almost nothing's changed. Yes, my sister might be my biological mother, but she's not my real mother. A mother is someone who raises and cares for a child. My sister surely doesn't deserve to be my mother. I only have one mother, and she will stay as my mother forever. Thank you for listening to my story. If you like stories inspired by real life, you can subscribe to this channel. Bye.
Hi everyone, I'm Justin. I have to go to school every day with 2 bodyguards. It sounds pretty cool when I say that. But when you find out what happened to me, you'll see it's not exactly something that you'd want for yourself. My dad is a truck driver. For years, he drove around the whole country. We'd only see him 4 or 5 days a month at most. Even though we barely spent time together, we had this strong bond. On the days when he was home, we used to play board games. He would always let my sister or me win. I miss those days a lot. We were a really happy family. I was happy at home and at school as well. I think that's because I had the best group of friends in the city. Matt, Jamie, Chris, and I have been friends since kindergarten. We went to the same schools. We promised each other that we would stay together until high school's over. Last year, Matt's family moved to another city. Matt convinced them to let him stay here with us. He lives with his aunt right now. Things were going really well, and then something seemingly good happened, which changed our lives. My dad has been playing the lottery for years. Occasionally, he would win small prizes. But one day he hit the jackpot and won the biggest prize in years. So one morning, we woke up as one of the richest families in the city. Many people dream of winning the lottery. My dad quit his job as a truck driver. We moved to a nicer neighborhood, bought a bigger house. From now on, we could buy anything we wanted. This is the good part. And then there's the flip side. A lot of news outlets talked about my dad winning the jackpot. Everyone knew the truck driver who got rich overnight. Relatives and friends who my parents hadn't seen in years started coming over. But why? To celebrate with us? Of course not. Some were straightforward, others less so, but they all wanted money. In the middle of all this ruckus, I was trying to go on with my ordinary but happy life. I didn't care about money, the new house, luxury cars, and all that stuff. My sister started going to a private school. Of course, I didn't change my school. My dad said, "Okay, but at least let my driver take you there." I said no. I wanted to take the bus like I used to. The bus stop was a 5-minute walk from the school. One day, I got off at the stop and was walking to school while watching a video on YouTube. I felt like I hit something. I looked up and it was a guy. Just as I was about to apologize, he grabbed me and dragged me to an SUV that was parked nearby. I was so shocked I couldn't even scream. Just as he was trying to push me into the back seat of the SUV, we heard a siren. Whoever was in the driver's seat of the SUV was obviously a coward. He hit the gas and drove away without waiting for his friend. The other guy was stunned. After a moment of hesitation, he started running towards the SUV. Naturally, the police followed him. They caught the guy in no time. It turned out these guys were criminals. When they found out my dad had won the lottery, they decided to kidnap his son for ransom. They'd been following me for days. Finally, they decided to go for it. Thankfully, I was saved by a police car that was passing by. I was curious about how much money they would ask for me, but I could never find out. Naturally, my dad was very worried. And he was right. There could be other people out there who had the same idea. "You can't be going to school alone anymore. I'm gonna hire a security company. They will drive you around," he said. What? I would be going to school with bodyguards? Dad, that's embarrassing, I was about to say. "Justin, I don't want to hear about it. We don't have a choice," he said, and didn't let me protest. That same night, 2 people came to our house to meet me. They looked exactly like what you would imagine bodyguards to look like. They didn't take their sunglasses off even inside the house. A guy named Alexander was in charge. "Mr. Justin, you need to comply with some rules for us to be able to do our job," he said. "What kind of rules?" I asked. The first and most important rule is you can't go anywhere without us. The second rule is that you can only have one person with you at any time, at school or outside. I turned to my dad in shock. What do you mean? Dad, and will my friends take turns to hang out with me? I asked. My dad didn't respond. Thank you, Alexander. We will do as you say. We're expecting you at 7 a.m. tomorrow, he said as they left. The following day was one of the most embarrassing days of my life. My dad called the school's administration and told them about the kidnapping, and they let the bodyguards into the school. The whole day, the 2 bodyguards were following me wherever I went. And of course, everyone was staring at us. The worst part was that they waited by the door while I was in the bathroom. I called my friends the night before and told them about the bodyguards. I told them that only one person will be allowed to come near me. Our first meeting the next morning was really upsetting. When I saw my friends, I forgot about the bodyguards and wanted to go to them. But Alexander stood between us and stopped me. After that, Chris came running to me alone. Jamie and Matt had to watch us from a distance. This wasn't something that we were used to, but there was nothing we could do about it. We had to play along for some time. Nearly a month went by. I thought I'd eventually get used to it, but that did not happen. I was still very uncomfortable walking around with bodyguards. The worst thing was that my relationship with my friends suffered a lot more than I could imagine. We used to hang out at school, and then afterwards we'd go to an abandoned paint factory. It had been empty for years. We called it the Gray Castle. We used to hang out there without anyone bothering us. But now we couldn't see each other at school nor at the Gray Castle. I was so sad to see Jamie, Chris, and Matt drifting away from me. They were my best friends. I had to do something quickly to fix my relationship with them. The only way I could hang out with my friends was to get rid of the bodyguards. Otherwise, they would never let me go. Alexander and the other guy brought me home around 4 every day, stood in front of our house until 6, and then left. I couldn't wait for their workday to be over because by then it would be too late. I decided I would run out through the backyard, go to the Gray Castle, and surprise my friends. When I came home, I went to my mom holding my head. I told her, "Mom, I have a terrible headache. I'm going to take a nap. My room is downstairs." As soon as I got in, I changed my clothes and jumped out to the backyard. The bodyguards were by the front door, so they didn't hear a thing. I took the bus from the other side of the block and rode towards the Gray Castle. I think my acting was too good. My mom thought a headache that bad wouldn't go away with a nap. She came to my room with a glass of water and a painkiller. She saw that I wasn't there. She thought I went to the bathroom, but after a while, when my sister came out of the bathroom, they figured out I wasn't at home. My mom panicked and let the bodyguards know. They called me first, and then when I didn't pick up, they called my dad. The first thing they thought was that I got kidnapped. So they decided to call the police. The police got on it right away and quickly figured out my location by tracking the signal from my cell phone. I had actually seen Alexander's call. He must be calling to tell me something about tomorrow. I'll call him when I get back, I thought. Sometimes he'd call and say, "Heavy traffic expected for tomorrow morning. Let's leave 15 minutes early," or something like that. My plan was to spend a few hours with my friends and come back to my room through the window. But when they realized I was gone, things got crazy. My family and the bodyguards were rightfully worried. Meanwhile, I was happily chatting with my friends at the Gray Castle, totally unaware of what was going on. We had so much to catch up on since we hadn't seen each other properly for weeks. I was doing an impersonation of Alexander, mocking him for taking his job too seriously. Suddenly, we heard sirens outside. Then we heard the loudspeaker. "This is the police. You are surrounded. Put your hands up and come out now." Police? We looked at each other in shock. What was happening? Was it a hidden camera prank? We put our hands up like they said and walked outside. There were cops everywhere. Soon the police found out what was going on. No one had kidnapped me. I'd run off to meet with my friends while everyone was looking for me. They picked us up from the empty factory building and took us to the police station. My dad, my 2 bodyguards, and the families of my friends were waiting for us there. I was so worried about having caused such a big scene. But my dad comforted me. "Justin, I get you, son. This money brought a lot of good things into our lives, but it also caused a lot of issues," he said. "Dad, I was really happy with my friends. I want to hang out with them," I said, and he put his hand on my shoulder and said, I'll fix this. I got an idea as I was waiting for you, he said. Do you know what my dad's brilliant idea was? To buy the Grey Castle. Yes, he found the owner of the building, made the guy an offer, and turned that place into a playground for us. Then I understood that being rich is not so bad after all. After school, the bodyguards take us to the Grey Castle. We finish our homework in the library first, because that's Dad's condition, and then we do whatever we want to do. Some days we play PlayStation on a giant screen in the game room. Sometimes we have a tournament in the bowling alley, and sometimes we watch a movie in our private screening room. When we play basketball on the court outside, the bodyguards join us as well. By the way, I have to tell you that Alexander can really play. This is my story. I hope you liked it. Thank you for listening. If you like stories based on real-life events, you can subscribe to this channel now. Goodbye.